Okay, that's perfect. Athletes, take your mark, get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blu Robinson here. Hey, listen, I want to thank you all for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. We greatly appreciate you doing that. Athletes, if it's not too much trouble, jump on our website, addicttoathlete.org. We would love to have you check out some of our resources, some of the things we have on there available for your downloading pleasure to help with addiction, to help with loved ones with mental health issues and trauma, and really to kind of get in mindset of our erase and replace philosophy. Athletes, today we have a great guest on here, one we've been following for quite a few years, who has a heartbeat in the rhythm of helping people overcome addictions and using some of his influence of his past and his history to help increase the awareness of what's possible out there in the world of recovery, overcoming obstacles. Today, athletes, we have Chris Herron. Chris, thank you so much for slicing out some time for us today here on Addict II Athlete. How you doing today, brother? We'll get jumping into this.
I'm great. You know, one day at a time. It's super blessed. You know, I'm walking around my wellness center right now, and I'm with the most important people, the newcomers, and you know, it's amazing.
I love it. I love it. Athletes, Chris Herron has started a project out there back east called the Herron Project, specifically to help people overcome addictions. And Chris, you know, I think to skip some of that middleman, I know that you have a lot of information out there. And athletes, I highly recommend you do some research on Chris. A lot of you guys have been aware of him because we've talked about him in some of our groups about overcoming adversity. But Chris, I'm curious, man, going from a situation where you were in, we're talking like, some impressive stadiums playing basketball with professionals left and right. It's more, I guess, I don't know, excitement you get nowadays walking into a room of 12 to 15 people versus onto a basketball court with thousands of people cheering. What's the difference for you when you leave that arena versus leaving that group room, knowing that you've had a huge impact on these people's lives?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely different, right? I mean, it matters much more than a basketball game. So, you know, I've been speaking now for 12 years. I do about 200 speaking events a year. You know,
Wow.
I've spoken in front of 10,000, and I've spoken in front of 10. And you know, only the ego cares how many. So it doesn't matter to me who's in the room, how many in the room. Um, you know, it's just the message to the people who need to be there, who want to be there. You know, and I'm so blessed to still have a seat to listen.
Absolutely. So you just mentioned those newcomers, and I love watching those folks come in that really are kind of just really going to help you, overcome this. We call them the rookies on Addict to Athlete, right? What's your best? I don't know. What's your best? I guess advice for the rookies that come into the world of recovery that really are kind of skeptic that maybe it'll happen, because I've read and known a little bit about your history. It wasn't the first time in treatment that you kind of caught that aha moment. It was a few different situations and attempts to jump into that. Like, you teach the rookies, the people that come in for the first time, that are like, really, what can you do? What do you have that can help me?
You know, I listen. I think it's all about surrounding yourself with empowering people. I think it's about um, listening. You know, I think it's about opportunity. I think, you know, the newcomer, you just got to take suggestions, right? And I'm talking off a 12-step base, right? That's my
Yeah.
foundation of recovery. But I also, you know, I've tweaked it somewhat. Like, I think it's very important to not just have a sponsor. I think it's important to have a board of directors. I think, you know, when you get into early recovery, to align yourself, to set yourself up with, you know, a boardroom of people uh, that you respect, that you know you'll listen to,
Yeah.
and want them to be part of your recovery. So, you know, again, the newcomer will always be the most important person in the room, because I know what it's like to be new, and I know what it's like, you know, holding on by your fingernails. But um, recovery wasn't that attractive to me when I tried to get sober at 21. You
Hmm.
know, it wasn't like this thing that was, for lack of a better word, pitched to me like this is going to be beautiful. it was
Yeah.
pitched to me like you're not allowed to do what you were doing anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost like you know, recovery was almost like it was like you caught an illness. Like you
Yeah.
can't, you know, they were going to restrict you. So um, that's not how recovery was given to me back then. You know, and
Yeah.
sadly, I'll see people in airports, and you know, they'll say to me like, "Oh, you know, I feel so." You can't have a drink. Like
Yeah.
you can't just have one drink. And you know, I tell them like, I thank God I can't have a drink. You
Yeah.
know, I thank God that I can, you know, dance with my wife at a wedding or travel with my kids on vacation, and I don't need that outlet anymore in my life.
Yeah.
You know, I take great pride in the fact that for the last 14 years, I've been able to, you know, to remain true to not only myself but to my family.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Listeners, I love that you're talking that way because that board of directors is much kind of what I like to teach the athletes that I'm coaching into recovery, and that's telling them, hey, you got to build a strong home team. Like on your at your home, you don't, you know, you have home court advantage, right? You don't let dumb things come in here and influence your home court. And so we about that, those board of directors, the people you surround yourself with, the people that understand that you do have limits and boundaries, but also that there are some things and some different plays you have to run to make sure that your sobriety stay strong in that realm. I think that's
Right.
awesome. So tell
And
me, go ahead.
recovery touches so many parts of your life. It impacts
Yeah,
so many different parts of your life, addiction as well. And not everybody's, you know, not everybody's guidance or, you know, their experience can touch that. So to surround yourself with multiple people that you can go and get their expertise on certain parts of, you know, what you're going through, to me is extremely important. And you know, you know, home court is crucial. I think that when it comes to recovery, um you know, I tell all the newcomers like, get ready for monotony. You know,
yeah,
settle into the
hmm
monotony. Like, and they look at me like, oh, I don't like monotonous. Well, listen, I used to shoot at a basketball rim 1,000 times a day, and that's
yeah,
how I got good at it. I dribbled the basketball for 2 hours a day, and I became good at it. So
yeah.
recovery requires the same type of discipline, the same, and you got to be okay with the monotony that recovery kind of interjects in your life.
Absolutely. I love that mindset. And when you teach that, to be okay during those times, it makes those times actually a little bit more, you know, I guess beneficial because then they'll say, hey, I can do really hard things and I don't have to have that mindset of I've got to block all this stuff out. And I know for me, being a therapist and being a substance abuse counselor, I've worked with a lot of people, Chris, and I found that a lot of people have addictions that stem from some kind of core issue revolving around trauma. And one of the neat things that I've seen that health, athletics, and movement does is I believe that movement equals healing. You know, not just sitting around, but doing something, giving back. Not just in your own recovery, but what have you noticed about people that really kind of get behind their sobriety by turning that mess of addiction into the message of sobriety, much like what you've done with the Heron Project and with your speaking engagements? You are one of those agents of recovery that I love to talk about because you didn't just kind of tuck your head in a world where talking about this and the stigma behind it, man, that's almost worse than the headlines in the paper because, you know, rumors, they fly. How in the world do you teach these people that say, hey, if I can turn my mess into a message, so can you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's, you know, I'm very fortunate, right? I never had any intention on being the messenger, right?
Yeah.
Like it just kind of happened organically for me. If you asked me 10, 12 years ago if I was going to be a speaker on addiction and recovery, I would tell you I have absolutely no idea how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and thankfully it happened organically. Um, and for me, it was just, I was fortunate to have a family that were okay with putting it all out there, you know,
Hmm.
and putting it all out there and letting everything come out onto the table. Um, it just made it easier for me. And to start unguarded, you know, my wife and I had many sleepless nights kind of reviewing unguarded and saying
Hmm.
like, you know, should we put that in? Should we take this out? Should we put this in? What's that going to look like in 5 years? But I thank God every day that we did not erase, that we kept it all out there, because for me it was about, for my wife and I, when we watched that, we said, what if that part is what somebody needs?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's my message has evolved over the years, right? When it comes to kids, I think, especially young athletes, and young students, I think when it comes to addiction, we focus on the worst day and we forget the first day.
Yeah.
We want to show people pictures of drug addicts, like look how bad they are, instead of the beginning. And I think once we recognize the beginning, like you said, the trauma where it starts, then I believe we have a chance at intervening early and changing people's lives.
Oh man, absolutely, absolutely. And the interesting thing I found too is that when you talk about it, you come from that humble part of your heart. It's like, I get it. And although all of our circumstances on how we got to that addiction may be different, there are some very commonalities. There's a lot of common things that happen. What have you found that works just with that one-on-one person, that one person that just is like, you know what? I get it, but man, you're Chris Herron. You had all these other opportunities and breaks. They don't realize that you played the same game that everyone else plays, about the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the anxieties. All those are the same. It doesn't matter what arena you're playing those in. Everyone has. When they start realizing that you carry the same kind of emotional currency that they carry, do you notice the kind of the lean in, maybe the buy in?
Well, I mean, listen, I didn't, I was 32 years old, and there was nothing left in my life besides really what mattered, the
Yeah,
love of my family, right? But when it came
yeah,
to, you know, finances, homes, cars, everything is gone because of my addiction. So I didn't go to a wellness center like my wellness center where I'm sitting at right now, right? There's
yeah.
36 people living here, and they're waking up in the morning, and the first thing they do is yoga, and then they go to my personal trainer, and they work out in the gym, and you pull up at 9 a.m. and there's people running the track, and they're moving. I didn't have that. I went into a
Hmm.
center with 96 men. I lived with 12 people in a room, and I had to wash dishes and make my bed every morning. So um you know I didn't have a head start, right? Like, I
Yeah.
started right where I was supposed to start, and I did it the hard way. Uh, I finally gave my esteem a chance. Like, I finally said, Chris, like, you don't have to fake. You don't have to talk about the past. You don't have to live in those moments. Like, live now.
Yeah.
Just live right now, because right now this is your true baseline.
Hmm.
And once I identified that true baseline where I was at in my life, in when I was in treatment, I saw myself getting better. I saw myself working. I saw myself improving. And that esteem was very necessary for me.
Yeah. About that too. I think, sometimes when we get our heads and our minds caught so far back there in the past, we have a hard time seeing the future. Because it's
Mhm.
like you take a shot and you miss it, you can't keep worrying about that shot. You got to take the next one. So it is kind of a great mindset to have that. So I'm curious though, because you did have a couple of shots at recovery at some different facilities. What was it in the last one that really kind of grasped that aha moment? That's like, you know what? I'm
Yeah,
done. I think we all kind of lean into it a different way, but like, what was it for you that last time where you're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it this way. This is what I think and I feel I need to do.
I think, again, I think we don't come in on winning streaks, right? And
It's true.
you know,
Very true.
it's really easy to get caught up in the negativity that of 96 men living under one roof in a treatment center. Um, but there's multiple things that happened to me, and one being, um, a guy told me that I should envision my children watching me while I'm going through my recovery process. Like, every
Mm,
room you walk into, every meeting you sit in, your children are right behind you, and they're listening and they're watching. So go walk through your recovery like your kids are there. And to me, in very early recovery, that was helpful. That was extremely helpful for me to know that the people who love me and care about me, I'm walking them in to this meeting with me. And, I tell people here all the time at Heron Wellness, like, some of your family members, they work harder than you.
Yeah.
Like I tell them, if you told your mom, come check in here, she'd work harder than you for your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's important. For me, it was finding the ability to be transparent, to be authentic, and to let everybody know who I really was and where I was at in life.
Man, yeah. Yeah, and how hard was that though, brother? Because again, I think authentic people in recovery have that mindset, but some people still are afraid of that past and they kind of, suppress it and hide it. So much more success having that kind of a mindset to show people those true colors rather than trying to pretend and portray that you're something else, that you are Superman, that you do have all the answers, like did you find like that mindset, and I'm not going to call it a buy-in, but people lean into their recovery a little bit more because they're like, man, this is more genuine than I thought. Maybe this is what I need to learn and lean into. Do you find that being a benefit, just being
Yeah.
real instead of hiding?
I mean, I think you have to lean in. I
Yeah.
think you have to, right? I think if you don't lean in, you're living in that gray area.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why doing Unguarded and writing a book, that's why it was so important to me, because I leaned into it and I wanted people to say, like, you don't have to feel ashamed for all of the things you've done. Like, let's build up from today.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing for me was like, if I walk into a basketball gym 14 years ago, my jumper wasn't right, but if I went to the gym for a year straight and worked on my jumper will get right.
Yeah.
And to me, there's no difference in recovery. Like, there's certain things that you have to do. There's certain marks you have to hit, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Yeah.
And, whether that's focusing on, like you said, moving, fitness, health, mindfulness, meditation, meetings, whatever it is, you got to hit your marks, because once people stop missing their marks, you watch them kind of drift off a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love that. I love that. Did you ever think you'd be an author? I mean, you're talking about professional athlete, but author and all that stuff too. I mean, that's pretty wild. Which like really proud of it. I mean, you look at this big scope of what you've been doing.
Yeah.
I think writing a book would be wickedly tough, man. Like, how hard was that? Because I think you do that. You're dumping all this stuff in there, and it's therapeutic and relieving for you. But you're also like, this is all my soul in here. Like, that's got to be a little
Yeah.
bit interesting to deal with and wrestle with those feelings.
It's a long fourth step, right? I mean, that's is what
Yeah.
it's a huge inventory. I wouldn't recommend it to people. When I did it, I was like 2 years sober.
Whew.
And the reality is I'm unbelievably blessed to have come out of that, still
Yeah.
sober, because, the emotional commitment and the taxing nature of opening up your soul,
Yeah.
day in and day out, is extremely, extremely difficult and risky. So,
Yeah.
for me, it was not the brightest move, I would say, and I wouldn't recommend it to people who were early in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the message is in there, like you said, and having your wife be able to be there, kind of as a proofreader and some emotional healer going on there, being like, yeah, I think that needs to be in there because you're right. Our stories, again, although kind of different, are kind of the same too.
Mm.
So tell me about the Heron Project, because I've watched you guys for quite a while, and I've loved seeing some of the social media stuff come out of there, because there's such a need for this genuine type of like counseling and therapy and resources for people. When did that come about? How did you start it? Because that's not easy either. I mean, trying to jump through all those hoops and just be like, hey, now I'm really going to take on a challenge. I think that's probably more intense than some of those games you played, just starting and getting this program up and running.
Yeah, for me, it just came from a really genuine place, right? So it wasn't that difficult, because I didn't walk into the Heron Project 12 years ago and say, I'm going to raise $10 million and I'm going to help, you know, thousands and thousands of people, right? I just want to put a little something together so I can be that phone call for some family or for someone. I want to be a resource. I want to give back what I've been given. It was really an act more of
Mm,
service than it was creating this foundation. Um,
yeah,
and I believe Heron Project is still very successful because everybody who works for it and involved in it, it's an act of service, right? It
yeah,
really is. And in order to, I tell people all the time, like, you know, there is nothing more valuable in life, a front row seat to what we have here. Like
true.
we get to sit courtside and
Mm-hmm.
watch people's lives completely change and be rebuilt. And
Yeah.
not many people in life get that miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Oncology, people who work in the hospital in the ICU, they watch people kind of come back to life. We watch that live here, and Heron Project, Heron Wellness, Heron Talks, that's been the mission from day one is just to reach
Yeah.
one. And, I'll say this, it's, I did a podcast this morning with a young lady who heard me speak 11 years ago, 10 years ago, when she was a
Wow.
student. So to see that come for full circle now it's extremely touching because, that was the mission from the get-go, and that still remains the mission.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible because again, you can always have your mind stuck back in that past, the should have, could have, would have, but that doesn't get you anywhere. You seem like you're a man who's leaning forward and kind of like, saying, "Hey guys, there's a more excellent way. Let's go check this out." So you've been having the Heron Project's been going on for would say 11 years. Is that what you said?
11 years. Yeah.
Oh my heavens! And you've seen probably a lot. Probably seen some heartbreaks and stuff. What gets you up to get there every day to keep going? I mean, you're a busy guy. I know this. We've tried to get you on this podcast before. So you are constantly living that 12th step of service, of carrying that message. How are you doing that, brother? How are you keeping yourself above the waterline, doing all
Yeah.
this for the community and the recovering population, but keeping your head above the waterline?
Well, I have an unbelievable staff, right, in all areas of my world. Like I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by I'm surrounded by very talented people. Um, that again are very mission driven. So whether it's Heron Talks, Heron Project, Heron Wellness, I just have amazing people that I've surrounded myself with. And like I tell people in recovery, right? Like my whole life, I wanted to get on the best court. I
Yeah.
want I wanted to play in the best court with the best players at the best time. And to me, that's no different in your personal life, professional life, and what we do today. Like I want to
Yeah.
be around the best. I want to surround myself with the best. I want to work with the best. And none of this would be possible if it wasn't for the people who've bought in and believed in the mission and just love having a front row seat.
Absolutely, man, brother, so good. I know you got a hard out, but please tell me a little bit about the ways people can contact you, your books, your social media outlets, the Heron Project. How do people reach out to get what you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm easy to find, right?
Yeah,
I'm not a huge self promoter when it comes to that type of stuff. Heron Wellness, Heron Project, Heron Talks, um, are all vehicles into our mission. And
yeah,
anybody can reach out and find something. Um, you know, at Heron Project, we navigate for families who, all of a sudden wake up with this really deep, dark moment in life, and now they're expected to adjust and make really good decisions. Um,
yeah.
we want to we're that vehicle for them. We have
I
family
love that.
support groups. We have, we give scholarships to sober living. But
Mm,
if you told me, 10 years ago that we would help 2,500 people get into treatment and give scholarships to, I would have said you were crazy because
it's a miracle.
I didn't want to live there. I didn't want to
Yeah,
live that, with the goal that I'm going to help so many. I just wanted to live with the mentality that I'm going to wake up and help one today.
man.
And that's just kind of been me from the beginning, and I'm very fortunate.
You're doing it, brother. And like I said, I've watched you guys for many years, and I've
Right.
seen and it's been a part of just like watching from that spectator stand of like the good that you're doing. And we need more people out there. I was an owner of my own facility that we decided to shut down because it just wasn't the industry I liked. I like doing the nonprofit stuff that we're doing over here. So my hat is absolutely tapped to you guys who do that labor intensive hard work because it's needed. And now more than ever, I mean, we're losing hundreds of people a day to overdose, and so really it's an uphill battle, but you're used to that, man. You're used to helping in those uphill battle moments. So thank you for all that you're doing. Listeners, please check out the Harem Project. Please we'll put his website and his books here on the links to the Addict II Athlete podcast. And Chris, last thing, man, what's that one thing, that last piece of advice you give to somebody who just doesn't think that it's possible? What do you tell them?
For me, it's I was so wrong. I was so wrong 14 years ago on who I thought I was going to become. I sold myself so short. I was so far off. Recovery to me, and I tell this to kids all the time, recovery has given me an advantage in every facet of my life. So why not go after it?
Exactly. Why not go after it?
Every facet of my life, recovery's improved. And
I love it.
It's again, it's tough to see through that in early recovery, but I tell people all the time I was so wrong. I was so far off the mark who I thought I could be and what I'd become. And that's the beauty of living one day at a time, right?
Yep. Absolutely, man. I love it. The only thing that matters is right now. So thank you, brother. Hey, listeners, you've been well fed. Please continue to support the Harem Project by checking out Chris' books and jump on his socials because there's some neat stuff there, a lot of inspiration for recovery and some guidance. And until next time, athletes, please continue to turn that mess into a message.